Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Ritz. I am the Director of Product Marketing at Visible Thread. First, let me thank you so much for joining us today for Optimize. And thank you if you've joined any of our other sessions. I hope you have enjoyed them. I know that you will enjoy this one. We have a wonderful panel for you today. So the session is the art of bidding. And in the art of bidding, it is the art of proposal writing. So we have a panel here with a plethora of experience, and we're going to walk through kind of all aspects of proposal writing and storytelling with our group today. So just a couple housekeeping items. In the panel, you can see the schedule for the rest of Optimize. There are some items that you can download and some links to our resource center. So you can find all of that there to see and learn about sessions that are upcoming. And then we'll have one more session today, which if proposal writing or writing in general is something that's interesting to you, the next session is on prompt engineering. So we do have another writing focused session coming up next. It was by me, so a little bit of overload of me, but it is pre-recorded, so you'll get a little bit of that. So I invite you to join that as well, and then any of our upcoming sessions as today or tomorrow. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in and do a quick intro of our panel, and then we're going to have a brief survey, and then we'll jump into the conversation. So with us today, we have Anatolia Masick. She is the founder and CEO of Candid Consulting. She has 20 years of experience as a writer and 15 in business development, and she started her career at a community newspaper. I think that is such a fun fact. Rachel Charlton is a professional writer with 15 years of experience and more than 12 years in the AEC industry. She is the founder of Sticky Communications, where she helps professional service firms connect brand to business through strategy, storytelling, and sales enablement. And then we have Jenny Carson. She's the VP of Proposal Operations at Chickasaw Nation Industries and brings over 20 years of experience in business development and proposal management, helping organizations craft compelling, compliant, and high-impact proposals. So welcome to our panel. We are so excited to have you here today and can't wait to jump into the conversation. So like I said, we have a couple of polls right away. The polls are super easy. I'm going to show them on the screen. You can click right on the slide here to answer. Just want to learn a little bit more about our audience today to help shape the conversation and find what will be most relevant to you. So how long have you been writing proposals? Are you new to the industry? Have you been around for a while, or are you a seasoned professional? Would love to just get a gauge of everybody's experience level. And I'll give everybody a few minutes, a whole few minutes, a few seconds, just a little bit of time. And then once we get some responses in, we'll jump into the results and take a look.
I feel like we should have that Jeopardy music going in the background.
Yeah, there should be some background music.
You can sing it, Anatolia.
Oh yeah, yes. The stage is yours.
Okay, what's the tune? Like do 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 do.
Yes. Okay. Pop up. All right, we got over half of our attendees here, so we'll pop on. Okay, so we have a nice mix. We have a lot of folks that are fairly new, and we have a lot of seasoned professionals. Love to see that as well. So a good mix of folks on the call today. Thank you so much. So we're going to pop on. We have one more, and then just want to understand what is the size of your organization. So this is really telling based on how things will impact you on your day-to-day and what your processes might look like. So if you could go ahead and select here, that would be super helpful as well. So the music, we can put the music back on. And I'll give one quick housekeeping item while we're waiting here. From a Q&A perspective, you do have there's a Q&A box here, and then we also have there's an attendee chat as well. But in the Q&A box, if you have any questions for our panelists as we're working through, I'll go ahead and try to work those in if they're appropriate to the conversation, and we will be holding time at the end for Q&A. And if there's anything we don't get to, we will make sure that we follow up with you after and connect you with our panelists to make sure that you get the answer that you're looking for. All right, let me jump over. Okay, well, we are pretty heavily enterprise here, but we do have some good representation from our small and mids as well. So that gives us a good idea of where we stand. So with all of that being said, let me go ahead and jump in. So today we want to really talk about content creation. What are the challenges that you're facing from a content perspective? Where is AI coming in? How are we leveraging that effectively? How are we writing for evaluators? How are we keeping our customer at the center of what we're doing and making sure that we're focusing on their needs when we are creating content and developing our proposal? And how are we collaborating with our SMEs and collaborating with other teams within our organization? So the first thing first, it's kind of where every proposal lives and dies at that intersection of technical content and story. So even the best solutions can fall apart if the story doesn't connect and doesn't speak directly to the customer and their needs and their pain points. So how do we turn dry technical details into a more persuasive story that resonates with evaluators? And how do you balance that creativity with the strict structure of an RFP in this specific type of work? I'll go ahead, and Anatolia, you are on the top of my screen, so I'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, so if you could recap that for me once more, there was a lot of information in there.
Yes, so how do we turn some of the dry technical details that we're dealing with in proposal writing into a story that is persuasive and resonates with evaluators? So how do we speak to them with the type of content and the strict structure of an RFP response template?
Yeah, so basically telling that compelling story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have those, we have the instructions, we have the evaluation criteria, all the technical details we need to get in there, but we still want to tell a story at the same time. So how do we weave that all together? Is that the gist of the question?
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that I get asked probably on maybe not a daily basis, but a weekly at least, or a monthly basis. It's something that comes up frequently. Essentially, I think at the most basic level, it comes down to knowing your customer, knowing what's important to them, whether it's written in the solicitation or not, but understanding what are their needs, what's the most important thing to them, and writing to that. So figuring out of those evaluation criteria, of the instructions, what are the things that they're most concerned about? You still have to be compliant. You still have to meet all of those requirements, but through that, you are telling that story. And you're focusing, you start with your solutioning. So you're focusing on what's most important to them. How do you align your strengths? How do you align what you're offering, whether it's services, whether it's products? And again, no matter what size your company, I see, we do have a mix, but a lot of you are at larger businesses. No matter what it is you're offering, tie it to their needs first. So not looking at, I think a lot of times we go in with, well, this is what we sell, this is what we do, so we're going to talk to that against these requirements. But you kind of have to shift it a little bit and focus on what do they need first, and then tie that to what you're offering and weave that against the requirements. So it's kind of like if you're braiding hair, if you've ever had to do that, and you sort of braid it all together, as opposed to just focusing on the requirements first, or just focusing on what you're offering first. You focus on client need first, then you weave in what you're offering, and then you tie that to the instructions, to the evaluation criteria. And that's how you create a story that goes throughout the entire solicitation. So a lot of times we might see maybe in our past performance, we get a really strong story that we can tell because that's something that we tend to be really comfortable with, the work that we've done. So we're really good at telling stories there. Or even sometimes it's in the technical approach. We're really strong because we're really good at doing this work. We know what we're offering. We know what we've done and how we're going to do it. So we're really strong there. But then maybe in the management approach, not so much. Or when it comes to staffing something, we're not so good about talking there. Or even when it comes to pricing strategy, it kind of falls apart there because we're not thinking about the customer first and their needs. So we always put that first. We connect to them, always be connecting, right? We connect to them, and then we tie it into what we're selling. We tie it into the requirements, and that creates more of a story about what we're going to offer. Hopefully that answers the question.
Oh, it did. That's great. Jenny or Rachel, do you want to add? Do you have anything to add?
I'll just add that we have a tool in our proposal team's toolbox that facilitates the. I love the image of the braid, Natalia, like that really resonates with me. And we try to never give our writers, most frequently for us, that those are our subject matter experts, our SMEs. We try to never hand them a blank sheet of paper. So they know what they do. So that's one of the 3 elements of the braid, right? They live and breathe what they do every day. We don't have to provide that to them, but what we provide them with is, this is the requirement. And then these are the customer themes that we want to hit on as we answer this requirement. So that's how we kind of accomplish what you've described by saying, this is the requirement, you know what you do, and these are the things that the customer really cares about that we want to make sure we highlight as we tell this story.
Excellent. So when we're talking about telling a story, so that storytelling doesn't start with writing in this case, it starts with alignment. So when technical and writing teams come together early, the proposal can become, an expression of that shared strategy. So strong proposals are built long before writing begins. So how can technical and writing teams work together earlier in the pursuit to develop that shared story? So Rachel, I'm gonna let you take this one.
All right. So the question is, how can technical and marketing show up sooner before the RFP goes live? Yeah. So I think about the pursuit process as kind of a life cycle. Anyone that's kind of seen presentations I've done before, I kind of break it into 4 phases. Not original with me. A lot of places do it this way. Maybe add more phases to it. But there's 4 phases in the pursuit life cycle process. 1 is understand the client. 2 is gather and share intel. 3 is position and test. And then 4 is tell a story. And that's proposal writing through client interview presentations, et cetera, and winning the work. And really those first 3 phases, that's 80% of the entire effort. That's where a lot of it, it's going to be a great indicator of whether you're going to win or lose something. And oftentimes marketing or proposal writers, because I know that some people are like, what, marketing? What do you mean by that? Proposal writers, but sometimes they're called marketing coordinators and stuff like that. But they're brought in after the RFP goes live, or maybe sometimes a little bit before, but never at the very beginning of that pursuit life cycle with understanding the client. And I put kind of equal responsibility on both marketing and technical staff and seller doers to engage with that and understand, hey, who are our clients that we're pursuing? What's coming up in the pipeline? How can we align with that? Is there a shared space like Microsoft Teams where we can create channels dedicated to gathering client and project information where we can make sure that everyone's kind of seeing and downloading what's going on? What are the hot button issues? Maybe, and then that's where marketing can kind of help distill some of those win themes or customer themes, as Jenny was saying, that would then translate, and you can then test those things against what you think that the client has communicated to you to make sure that you're on the same page and there's that alignment. So that's how I would say it's capture planning or positioning meetings in advance. It's communicating with your seller doers, your proposal leads on the technical side, and having some of those conversations, being a resource to each other, to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. And that story, when it comes to telling the story, that 4th phase in the pursuit lifecycle process, all of that comes together way more seamlessly because you're on the same page. You have that outline, you have those themes, and everything just flows from that. And I think getting that outline is probably the most challenging part of proposal writing.
Excellent. Any additions from the group?
Yeah, I might add a few tactical things. Even, you mentioned marketing, but more like the proposal writers is marketing. I would actually say your actual marketers, marketing teams, including them in things like pipeline reviews, or even just when you're talking about opportunities, so that they're targeting blog posts, white papers, right, to clients that you're going to be bidding on opportunities for later down the road, right? So you're getting messaging out early on externally, but also you're aligning internally on what you guys are bidding on. But then for your proposal teams and your technical teams, aligning on solutioning early, aligning, having them, communicate on the pipeline, on the strategy early on, so everybody knows what are we working towards. Especially, this last year, RFPs in certain sectors, certain industries, certain markets, right, whatever you call them, haven't been as abundant as they might have been in previous years. And so that's a great time to focus on strategizing, right? Having your proposal people in the room with your business development people, in the room with your technical SMEs, focusing on what are we really good at, what are our strengths, tailoring your messaging around those strengths together. So not just BD, not just proposal teams, not just SMEs, but everybody together, figuring out what your strengths are, tailoring them then to the customers that next year, looking at the budgets, right, for next year, if we get them, sorry, but looking at, where we do know, budgets are going to be higher. VA, we know, is going to have a huge budget for 2026. If that's your client, getting those teams together with your marketing team, looking at where can we target our message for that customer? Where do we have good past performance? Where do we have good technical experience? Putting that all together now without any RFPs, so that you can start creating your messaging early, I think is going to be one of the best things that anybody can do in this sort of, unknown period of time. And that you don't need a solicitation to be able to do that. You can start creating white papers, blog posts, all sorts of criteria, that's not the word, collateral is the word I want to use, outside of the solicitation right now.
Yeah, communication is so key. It's that two-way street. And I think a lot of it starts with a marketing plan. Because if you have a marketing plan and you understand who your ideal client profile is, everyone who's involved in any kind of sales, marketing, technical, business development, y'all need to be on the same page. And like you said, if you know your marketing plan and your goals and who your target clients are, all of that flows out of that, like the thought leadership, the white papers, what conferences you're going to be attending, what clients you're going to be investing your energy into, how much energy are you going to be investing, all of that. It's so important. Yeah.
I can offer a proof point to what you guys are saying is correct. And that is we don't just track the proposals that leave our proposal shop. We track every artifact that gets created by our proposal team and then leaves the business, goes off to some destination. And we have seen a steady uptick in requests for information, sources sought, and white papers over the last, it was already increasing, but in fiscal year, we run government fiscal year 25, which we've just concluded, we were way heavier on those pre-solicitation documents than we were on proposals. And frankly, it helps you manage your pipeline, right? Like if you're engaging with that customer earlier, you're going to have less proposals that come in the shop that we just have no business bidding. That intimacy. And I fully support that full circle loop of having proposal engaged in those early marketing efforts. That solves a lot of problems too. That keeps us from saying we can do things that we actually can't deliver on when it comes time to pull the past performance citation, for example.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I want to think about the people on the other side of the table. So thinking about the evaluators and how their expectations shape what we do. So when we're thinking about the signals that we see in an RFP and how an evaluator is going to assess that proposal. Are there any signals that you see when assessing an RFP or assessing solicitation documents that give you an indication on how it will be evaluated or what things will be most important?
For sure. I'll
Jenny,
jump in.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Natalia. You take it.
Okay. So something that I have seen is there's a lot less of, from last year to this year, I've seen a lot less of evaluators wanting to understand the mechanics of how your solution works, and way more emphasis on what are the results, what's the timeline going to be. And I mean, it's always been price, but even more like, how little is this going to cost me, as opposed to how much is it going to cost me, how little is this going to cost me. But it's definitely been results, results, results. I want to know results, and pretty much that's it. Just tell me what the results are going to be. And so proposal responses, from what I've seen, need to be far more focused on the benefits, what's going to be achieved, and who's going to achieve it. So again, also more emphasis on the roles, the staffing mix that's going to be involved. It's always been important, but far more emphasis I've seen on that area most recently. And then Jenny, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that. And I'll say that we're seeing orals as part of the like oral presentations, demonstrations, as a means by which the customer is getting that personal connection with, like, who is my delivery team, and how smart are they, and how collaborative are they. Our proposal shop has actually developed a tool set around preparing the bidding team to speak well in an orals presentation, because that was nowhere on our radar 2-3 years ago. But over the last couple of years, we've really refined our ability to coach the bid team to be able to not just put it on paper, but to speak about it in a clear and coherent and compelling way. And that, I would say that that's one of the hardest things that our team has had to do to evolve to the changing market, is in addition to being proposal folks, but also orals prep coaches too. It's been challenging.
And I think that is interesting when we think about who holds that information. So technical teams often are the ones who hold that critical intel that we need, particularly if you're talking about orals or technical challenges or presentations, but it can get kind of buried and siloed within an organization. So how can writers really draw out, translate, and amplify that intel so it's the proposal speaks, strategically and technically in the way that you want it to, or the way that's going to be the most effective?
Practice.
I really think it starts with the past performance documentation, right? Because that's where, at least in my experience, that's where the proposal writers first meet the SMEs, the subject matter experts, is in interviewing them to learn about, to Anatalia's point, what's the value that was delivered. Anybody can read the scope of work as it reads in the contract, but so what, right? And that it's being able to ask those questions. And that, in my opinion, the asker is the proposal writer, or the writer, to ask your subject matter experts, what do you have any baseline metrics, and do you have any proof points to show that what we did mattered? And really beginning to build that repository of information that is a tangible representation of the value that was delivered.
Now, I think if I can add to that real quick, is another aspect of that is training them how to write a little bit.
That's right.
How to think about writing. I had to kind of add some proof to this. Years ago, I was working with an up-and-coming project manager, and it was his first proposal he was leading. And I knew he was great with all of his clients. I knew that he had a lot of information. He just didn't know how to write to it and distill it down. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is we just cloistered ourselves in a conference room with a whiteboard. And I basically said, we're going to matrix this out. We're going to talk about what you've heard the client needing, objectives, right? And we're going to talk about the challenges, potential and real challenges associated with those objectives. Then in another column, we're going to talk about what solutions or ideas do you have that will help them overcome those challenges. And then some kind of proofs, like any past stats, like the past performance stuff, benefit statements, like value adds, all of that stuff. And we started mapping this out, and he stood back, like had this light bulb moment. He was like, oh my gosh, this is my outline for the project understanding and approach. Like, this is how I need to write to this and speak to this. And it was just like, it was so cool to just take a moment, take a deep breath, work through it, which it's always kind of, if anyone's trying to put an outline together, it's kind of not the most fun experience ever. But like, once he had that, it was just, I mean, again, training people, working with them, that's how you as a marketer and proposal writer can show up for your technical team, especially if they're open to that. But make yourself a resource. It's not you against them. Like, you really have to understand where they're coming from. They weren't trained to particularly write like you write. They weren't trained to give orals, like all of this stuff. It's so key. It's giving them the tools and the resources they need, showing up as that mentor to them in their moment of need to help them be successful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, we've talked a bit about content and the content and focus it takes to create a strong proposal and working together with our SMEs and the processes involved within that. That is kind of my segue into talking a little bit about AI. I know that it's at the top of the forefront of a lot of conversations these days, and where is its place in content creation and proposal writing. So before we jump into that conversation, I want to get a quick pulse check from the group. We do have another survey. I know everyone's very excited. So just get an idea of where you are with AI in your content creation process. So in your content creation, editing process, idea generation, are you using AI in those processes today? And kind of what does that look like? So a little bit, often, or have you fully adopted? So you could go ahead and click right on the screen. We'll give you a minute, and then we will look at those results and then get into a conversation with our panelists about their best practices when it comes to leveraging AI effectively.
I'm always interested to see how people are using AI. Those who never use it, I'm like, how do you manage to avoid using it? And are you sure that you're not using it? I bet you are, and you don't realize it.
Well, that's the truth, that most of the time you are, because I think generative AI is such at a forefront of the conversation. That's sort of what people think of when they think about leveraging AI, even though we've been, in the sauce of using AI for years. So
yeah.
I know at the beginning of talking about this stuff, it was I think the biggest concern that I had at the time was, am I going to lose my skills as a writer? Like, is it going to cause me to be less of a critical thinker and become lazy? And then, but on the flip side of that, there's the other thing of people who don't know how to write, then suddenly thinking they're great writers. So like, there's two sides to that challenge. Yeah.
I think there was a Harvard article that said it does make you dumber if you only use it. So yeah.
It depends on how you use it. Yep, that's key.
Yeah. And if you're using AI as a replacement for the work that you're doing, I don't know. I have opinions.
It shows. It does.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So it looks like we have a lot of folks who, we do have a decent amount of folks who say that they are not using it at all, that they're still running a manual creation process. So a lot of folks that are using it a bit, but are new, and then some that are using it quite often, but looking to upskill. I think that's always super important, because you can't ever get to the end of the internet, I don't think. So you're never going to get to the end of everything that's available to learn. So that's a great piece. So that's super helpful. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that. We're not going to pop onto questions. But so transitioning into the AI conversation. So there are a lot of different ways that AI can be used, and there's a lot of great conversation out there around the appropriate tech for the appropriate job. So where does it fit in and how do we leverage it effectively? So that's really my first question. In your processes, the content that you're creating, the work that you're doing with clients and customers, in your day-to-day work, where do you see AI adding real value in content creation and proposal development right now?
Ooh, can I take this one?
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll try not to be too long-winded about it. But yeah, so real value, I would say two big ways for me that I've seen, and I've seen other people as well, is shredding the RFP in a period of like minutes versus you spending hours kind of fleshing through the RFP, trying, and I think you have to be careful with that. Like you definitely need to fact check always. So don't just like take the first thing that it pumps out at you, but it's such a great tool to kind of speed up that process, and you can prompt it to give you a proposal outline with any of key milestones. You could do a like for those who show up to a kickoff call that have not read the RFP, we all know those people. It's a great way to kind of give them a quick summary of like the key points. Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't fact check and things like that, but like that's a great quick tool to kind of take that admin, that tedious admin out of the picture and make the process a bit more efficient. I think the second way that's been so beneficial for me is basically as an editor to content that already exists or that we've tailored. Maybe we need to make it a little bit more succinct. Maybe we want to give it this slant. Maybe we want to emphasize X, Y, and Z, like for project descriptions or for a bio, or like we're limited on space. That has been such a huge value add. It's taken out so much of, it saved so much time, like hours of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. And it's allowed, at the same time, it's allowed me the space to think a bit more strategically about
Mm-hmm.
what I'm asking AI to provide, or what I want to then provide in addition to that. So like it's really been a great strategic tool for me.
Mm-hmm. No, that's excellent. I think that those editing prompts, when you're talking about, I have this presentation, I need to shorten that to a one-page summary, or I need highlights or points that I can focus on, or talking points, and those kinds of things can be really helpful and time-saving, while also not incredibly dangerous in the sense that it's working with a very specific type of there are guardrails on the content. So yeah, it's usually pretty reliable in those types of jobs.
Well, and I mean, you said the next section's prompt engineering or prompt prompting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And like that's so key to a lot of what you're going to get out, because, bad data in, bad data out kind of thing. So
absolutely.
I think the value add is really around the speed, right? It's like getting us there faster. And that's been our experience. And I've really clung to the phrase human in the loop, like to like help me get over the hump with AI, right? Like it doesn't completely replace the human. It allows, right. It allows our people to generate a lot more good work. And like Rachel said, you can't just take what it hands you without giving it some gray matter thought with it. And then I found that I actually have better ideas when I have a place to start from. So if I can just get that first version from AI, then I'm like, oh, okay, I know what I need. I know what I want to do here. I want to bring this in and that in. And then the other thing that I always, and I'm Generation X, so like perhaps this is indicative of my age, but I will say that it's important to me to know where the information's coming from. So like where did we point the AI to in order to come up with that solution? I like to be able to answer that question with confidence. Otherwise, I have suspicions about the quality of the information. So, and maybe that's just me. Maybe I'll get past that, but I just feel like knowing where it came from is super important.
Yeah, I don't think you should ever get past that.
Now, one thing that I do to help with that, Jenny, is I always ask it to cite all of its sources so that I can go back and double check, because that's a big deal for me too. I use it for a lot of research because there's so much information out there, and I feel like, I don't know, I'm naturally inquisitive and curious, and I want to know different things. And when I'm starting on a proposal, I want to know everything I can about that particular customer too. And so digging up, finding, what used to take me days to do research and background on a customer, I can now do in literally seconds, right? But I need to know the sources because yes, sometimes it can be incorrect. I was listening to an earlier session with Optimize, and I think it was Kristen Maycomer mentioned that like 30% of the AI stuff can be hallucinations. And so yeah, I always ask it to cite its sources to make sure that I know that, I could go back and double check and figure out what is actually real. But I'm an all day, every day AI user. I use it to do research. I use it to create content. I use it to do presentations. On a solicitation, I'll ask it to do the first round of questions. What are questions we should be asking? And it usually comes up with some things that I never would have thought of. Like maybe 70% of them I throw out, I'm not going to ask, but there's like one or two that I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. And that's great. I'm going to ask it, because I think we've all been in the situation where we get halfway through the response and we're like, oh, dang it, I should have asked this question. It's pulled questions like that, and I'm really glad that it does. And I'm really glad that I use it for that. I don't use it for editing or anything like that. I'm not comfortable with it yet. For that, I use my VT tools. But maybe one day I'll get there. I don't know. But yeah, I haven't found anything that I'm not comfortable with aside from the editing, but I use it pretty much all day, every day. And it does come down to the prompting. And once you get the results, just re-prompting it to make sure to validate is something that I think we all have to get in the habit of as well. But now I think it's one of those things that, yeah, it's here to stay, but it's not going to be something that, I don't know, it can be done on its own and it's perfect. There's definitely that human involvement that has to stay. Mm-hmm. We have to validate, we have to refine, we have to continue massaging things and using our brains to make sure that it is what it needs to be.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think there's a new model. I think one of the models currently in ChatGPT, at least, will source where it's pulling information from by default. I think it's like the thinking model, maybe, which is 5 or something like that. But even if you, like, for instance, I fed it an RFP PDF and told it to do, XYZ, and it did that, and it would tell me where in the RFP it was pulling that proof, that information from, because I'm like, are you sure? Tell me where in the RFP you're pulling this from so I can fact check you. And it did. It was great. It's a great tool.
If you feed it now with Visible Thread, it's collections. You can point at your collections and do it. But in a ChatGPT and some of the other models, if you feed it a document or you ask it to come from a specific place, it will, I know ChatGPT will reference. But that's a big part of the Visible Thread platform is the referenceability, particularly when we're working with groups of technical documents and solicitation documents. And
he does it at a different level. It's awesome.
Yeah, and hot plug, a lot of the things that were just discussed are covered with examples in the next session. Okay, so we think about leveraging AI, and one of the main things that we hear is that, okay, when we get to the point where everybody is now jumping in and they are using AI to generate content, using AI to manage and expand content and, craft their messaging and their win themes and all of these types of things. What happens if everyone's using the same generated content, won't we all sound the same? So what do you say to teams and leadership that have those fears, and how can you make sure that you're grounding the content in your data and not letting kind of your AI take the lead?
Yeah. I don't think that's, I guess I understand the concerns. There are some tools out there that have come up in the last year or so where perhaps that could be a concern. There's one, I won't name any names, but there's one in particular that I always like. I'm like, don't use that tool. But there, and you know, the same with like if you're using, if you're using the same consulting firm, right? How do you know that your proposal is not going to look the same as everybody else who uses that consulting firm, right? I don't know that that's necessarily a valid concern. You're still using your own past performance, your own technical approach. It's your individual company solution, right? And you still have to relate what you're offering to your specific customer. That still has to be woven in, your own win themes, the hot buttons that you are supposed to be gathering by knowing your customer. That is individual to you. That's not something that your AI tool is going to know. I don't think we're going to get to that stage where the AI is going to like have intimate relationships with contracting officers. If you can buy that tool, I think, wow, that would be amazing. Like if I could get stock in that tool, I will buy it right now because holy cow, that would be amazing. But all of that, you know, intel, that what makes BD special is still what makes BD special, and why it's such a niche industry, why it's such a niche skill set, right? The things that I do are always going to be important because tailoring the message is always going to be necessary, and you can't do that with AI. It's going to give you that baseline. It's going to help you get started. It's not going to solve the customer's problem for you. That's something that your company has to do. It's not going to, it'll give you a guideline on how you should be pricing your bid, but it's not going to help you figure out what's the correct staffing mix for your company to actually bid, right? There's nuance there that you're going to have to strategize and figure out. So I don't think that that's something that you should be worrying about. If you're just taking what you're getting, what's being generated and submitting that, that's a whole other problem that I would love to talk with you about and help you sort through. But that's not what you should be submitting. That's step one. There are many other steps in the process that should be happening that would alleviate that concern.
Yeah, if you're worried about sounding like, you know, XYZ from up the road, then I think the bigger issue is you're not understanding your brand framework, because that messaging, that strategy, those core values, yeah, you offer the same services as XYZ from up the road. Yeah, like that same, like, you know, and there's certain buzzwords out there that we all tend to use. So, you know, like, to Natalia's point, like, I mean, it's all about really understanding your brand. It's understanding, you know, your clients, your customers, right? And knowing how to talk to them. It's, you know, your unique past performance and outcomes that you've provided as a firm. So like, if you're concerned about that, there's like Natalia was saying, there's a whole deeper issue there.
AI is not your problem, right?
Exactly. AI is not your problem. It's the human behind the AI.
The human in the loop.
That's where prompt engineering also comes in, which will be in the next session.
Yeah, I think a good gut check is if you're worried that you might sound like everybody else, ask your delivery team, right? They're not going to let you get by with something that's so generic, because and they will call your bluff on that immediately. So I think having going back to those 3 strands that we kind of opened with, of like, what is the customer looking for? What is the stated requirement? And then what do we bring to the table? And weaving those things together, there's no shortcut to that. You have to deliberately collect the customer needs. You have to be thoroughly understanding the stated requirement, and you have to have a strong understanding of what and how you do this. You provide the service or the offering. There's no shortcut. You have to have those 3 things nailed in order to build that story. If you're trying to build the story on any one of those, you're a single-legged stool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now we have, I'm being respecting time here because we do have some great questions in the chat, and I want to make sure that we can get to those. So I want to just take kind of one more here. So we've talked a bit about how we collaborate, how we work with other folks in the organization, how we, tell a compelling story but stay true to our technical spaces, and then, AI, of course, in its role. So thinking about the skills to develop, what should writers be focusing on? What should content creators be focusing on? So what skills will be most critical for the next generation of writers and proposal managers? Rachel, do you want to jump in?
Can you state that question one more time?
Yes. So at its base level, I think I rambled a little bit on the front end, but what skills, as we're looking on an ever-changing industry and AI is becoming more a part of that process, what human skills are the most critical for the next generation of writers and proposal managers, or folks that are new in their career or are continuing to develop?
I would say soft skills, which I hate that word soft, like communication, teaching people how to communicate effectively, and communicate well and understand and have empathy with clients, people around them, people they're working with. I think that within organizations, there's such a huge silo effect that, is oftentimes accidental. But it's kind of bridging that gap between marketing and technical, even understanding how to write effectively, how to show up, training, things like that. Again, communication is going to be I think so key, especially even when it comes to using AI. It's really knowing how to strategically prompt it, how to strategically show up, how to strategically speak to something. And it's never a one size fits all.
Jenny and Natalia, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll say something that I think has always maybe been a little bit undervalued, but always important, and even more important moving forward, is adaptability. We've always needed to be adaptable. I don't always think it's been as highly valued, especially for proposal writers. I think there's been historically the idea that, well, you're just a writer, right? Just a writer, just, write the things, But I think the adaptable proposal writer is the most effective proposal writer, being able to be, take on any type of subject matter, take on any type of situation, no matter the deadline, no matter the difficulty level of the SME, right? The more adaptable you are, the more versatile you can be, the longer your career will be, the more successful your career will be, especially as we see there are more oral presentations, there are more technical challenges, there are more video proposal submissions. Mm-hmm. So what's the role of the traditional proposal writer in those scenarios, right? An adaptable proposal writer can find their place in all of those situations. And that's what's going to be important moving forward. Otherwise, if you're not adaptable, you become obsolete. And so being adaptable, learning to use AI effectively, learning to find your role in a tech challenge, learning to find your role in a video proposal is going to be critical, because we're going to see more and more and more of those things. So adaptability is the number one skill for me.
That's such a great point too. Like, I remember back in the day when I started as a marketing coordinator, all I basically did was just herd content and like put it into one Word document and then pass it off to our desktop publisher and they would lay it out. And then I got tired of waiting in line. I'm like, no, I'm going to learn InDesign. I'm going to learn how to use Illustrator. And so I think it's recognizing where you can step up, like Natalia was saying, and adapt, adapt or die kind of thing. It's just like you find ways to be a resource. I mean, don't spread yourself too thin, know your strengths, but like also show up, ask questions, like just go do the thing. I mean, I'm not saying do it rogue, but like.
Well, the pace of change is so fast, right? Like the first 10 years of my career looked very much the same. But the pace of change has just accelerated so rapidly, and that adaptability is important. I think going back to where we started, Rachel, communication is super important. And I think what I'm going to add to that is just having an emotional intelligence, right? Like the AI is never going to be able to like understand the hopes and dreams and fears of the customer. And at the end of the day, like that's why they're willing to pay for something, is because they have some sort of fear, or they have some sort of aspiration and some sort of hope. So having that emotional intelligence, being able to communicate well and adapt. I mean, that if somebody would come to an interview and bring those qualities, like you could find a place for them on just about any team, I think.
I feel like that's also like the true meaning of being authentic, of showing up as your authentic self, and people resonate and connect with that, or they don't, and that's okay too, you know? So storytelling.
And my puppy woke up.
We awoke the beast.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. I think we have time. So I'm going to take one question, and then everybody who entered a question in the chat, we will follow up. So I will be getting the questions to the panelists, and we will make sure that everyone gets connected and gets their question answered. But I'm going to go ahead and jump in with this one. So what strategies do we use to consolidate extensive requirements spanning 10 pages into a concise, compliant response limited to 5 stages that still meets all evaluation factors? Do you have any tips?
Ooh, so you have 10 pages. You need to get to 5 pages.
Yes.
Don't start with 10 pages. Who wrote it?
Know your limits. Don't go past that. We all agreed it was 5 pages.
So, but honestly, if I have a 5-page limit, I usually don't allow anybody who's not a proposal professional to start like writing it. If you give that to a SME, and then that's the thing, you have to know who you're giving it to develop the content. So there are certain people, I actually had this situation not that long ago where we had like, I think it was like a 2-page limit. And one of the executives that I was working with was like, oh, let's give it to this guy. I was like, no, I'm not giving it to that person because they're going to give me back 20 pages and I have a 2-page limit. So I'm going to draft it myself because it's 2 pages. I drafted it and I was like, I will give it to that person to review. So when you have a short page limit, know who your writer is going to be and know what they write like. Is that grammar? No, sorry. Know how they're going to write it, right? Know who you're giving it to. That's first and foremost. But if you have 10 pages that comes back to you, that's more than double, right? So, they probably haven't written it in order. So sorry, I'm like, my brain is exploding with this. As it would if I got 10 pages back when I needed 5, I would flip out.
PTSD moment.
I know. I'm like, you want to cut usually from the bottom up, right? What's written at the bottom is usually least important, but they probably haven't done that.
No, probably at the bottom.
Exactly. The most important is probably at the bottom. I would honestly send it back to them and say, you have to start all over. But that depends on your timelines too, if you can even do that. I'm crying now. I'm like, yeah, the PTSD is real. Yeah. There are usually a lot of words that are used that are unnecessary. Words like all, very, that. I would start by striking those. Change out words like ensure. Take out all your adjectives. Take out all your adverbs. I always strike all of those to begin with. There are also great tools like VT Writer that can help you cut those things. And short of that, there are also AI tools that you can use that if you tell them, cut this from 10 pages into 5 pages, it can do that as well while keeping the evaluation criteria. But before you even get to that stage, my advice is don't send it to a writer who you know is going to give you 10 pages when all you need is 5 pages. I would draft it myself or come as close to you can as getting it to those 5 pages and ask those SMEs that you need to just review it, because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time doing a lot of rework.
Right. Excellent. I'll ask one more, just a minute, quick answer. Where do we draw the line between using incumbent knowledge to strengthen our proposal and emphasizing past achievements that may come across as boastful?
I got feelings on this too, but I'll let somebody else answer.
I think I would cite the proof points, right? Like do you have data that represents the value that was delivered? And stay away from all those words that we learned to stay away from when we first started in these roles, right? Like the boastful words, the non-objective, the more subjective, boastful words. But if you can truly show that you delivered value, we ran a help desk contract, and there were 900 backlog tickets when we started, and we averaged 4 backlog tickets each month, right? Like something like that. Don't say what you, I mean, this is classic, but don't say that you're great. Show that you're great with some sort of measurable piece of evidence. And then understanding what the customer is looking for, right? Are they the kind of customer, have you done that work? Do you know, like, are they the kind of customer that really believes in the incumbent team? Then you might want to lean a little more heavily on the value that was delivered historically. Or are they leaning forward? Do they have like a new set of challenges that they need to have solved? Then you might want to lean a little bit more forward into what we can do or what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I would also add, don't talk about how you're not like so-and-so, like we're not like this, we're not like that, we're not like that. Don't be negative. Focus on like what you are, what value you provide. And also, I think stats are fantastic. I think you should brag about yourself, but in a way that then paints the value to the client of what they will get from that basically feature statement. So like you always have to have a feature statement with a benefit statement with following. Otherwise it's very me-centric of like, look at me, I'm so awesome, blah, blah, blah. No, it's how is that strength gonna show up for that project, for that client, for that community? How is that gonna be valuable to them? So it's really about showing up with that mentor versus hero mentality, because your client is the hero in the hero's journey. You're the mentor, you're the Gandalf to their Frodo, you are the Yoda to their Luke Skywalker. You show up with guidance, tools, and resources. You are not saving the day. You're making them look good. And so like, it's kind of keeping that narrative in mind as you are telling basically these mini stories throughout an RFP criteria, which is very much not conducive to a story. So, yeah.
No, that's great feedback. I think in conversations we've had with folks who have served as evaluators, that was one of the main things one main piece of negative feedback, that companies are really good about talking about what they do well, but they don't do a good job a lot of times in connecting it to what the customer is actually asking them for and why they are the best choice.
Yeah, because it's so easy to talk about yourself. I mean, it's just default. Like that's just what we do in general. It's just kind of flipping that mindset.
Yeah.
Showing up for them. Yeah.
No. Okay, excellent. Well, we are at time. So I want to first thank the panelists. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation. We do have some additional questions in the chat. I'm going to make sure that we get those over to our panelists and we get answers out to you. Additionally, in the follow-up, you will be receiving the links to everybody's LinkedIn. And you can also find them on LinkedIn right now if you would like, but we'll send you the links for that as well. And then you'll have the recording of the session. So if there's anything that you want to reference back to, but we encourage you, please connect with our panelists on LinkedIn. You can continue the conversation there. They are a wealth of knowledge and would love to hear from you. And as always, you can connect with me for any questions, anything you need. I love to chat. So happy anytime to connect with all of my fellow industry folks out there. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for participating in this session. Thank you for participating in Optimize. And again, the schedule for tomorrow is in the panel on the console, also on our website. And then, yeah, you're about 1 minute away from getting turned over to the prompt engineering session, if that's something that you're interested in. And that'll be the last session of today, and then we'll pick it back up in the morning.
Thank you all.
Again, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.